Hello and welcome to the Boss It podcast with Mark Edwards and Michael Humblet. This podcast is released every week and is an over-the-shoulder look of a frank and candid discussion between two experienced software executives, providing you with useful tips, techniques and the latest concepts to help you grow your software business in the fast-paced digital age. So let's get into it. Here is Mark Edwards and Michael Humblet.
Hello and welcome to Boss It podcast. I think we're now up to episode 11. Did you ever think we'd get there, Michael, when we first started?
Amazing.
It takes some effort, doesn't it? When we first started this and we weren't too sure, we thought we'd just sort of go out there and start recording these podcasts and see how it worked. But we're at number 11 and I think we'll continue going.
Yeah, it's all about production and speed, Mark.
It is, yes. And being able to do it, as we've found out, from anywhere in the world where we might be at the time. Yeah. Isn't the internet a wonderful thing when you can do that?
Yeah, I haven't done what I think I've done one in my home office, and all the rest is like today I'm in Corda campus, which is a place in Belgium called Hasselt, which is again a co-working place. So I'm sitting somewhere in the corner talking to this big microphone because that's the only thing I take along.
No chickens, any animals there as before?
No, it's startups and scale-ups and some really weird-looking people that think, what is this guy doing with his big ball microphone?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's quite cool looking though. You'll be right. Interesting you say about startups because I know that you've had quite a lot of dealings with startups over the recent years. And one of the things that I see them struggle with is in those first sort of early months is establishing a foothold. They need to gain credibility because there are some. Yeah, trust. It's about trust, isn't it? Because I think a lot of these younger, very innovative entrepreneurial companies, I think there's some good potential there. And when they get it right, wow. Software tech can really explode, as we've said before, when you look at these unicorn companies. But one of the questions that always comes up is about references, because they're new, they're small, it's a young business. People, they want to maybe put trust in them, but they want to reduce their risk as well. What would be your advice to a startup company in putting in place those references?
So two things. One, it's trust. We're going to go back immediately to that. And number two actually is being where the attention of your potential customers is. And that's where most of the startups go wrong. They stay within their own ecosystem, or they're just not there where their potential customers could be. Now, that's for another episode. So let's go back to the whole trust thing. And the biggest trust that can work is number one, social proof. So I'm always saying put on your website other people talking about you, put pictures of faces, put a lot of things so there is social proof. On the other hand, is a lot of companies, when they look at you for the first time, is they have no real clue if it would work at all. Or what so I just had 3 sessions with 3 startups, and one of them was actually a pretty big scale-up, and they all got stuck on this use case part. So what I told them is that they should make a use case. Even if they do not have a customer yet, you can make a use case. You just calculate how much would it bring, and it's either revenue up or cost down, or ideally both of them. And then you basically say, this is the context, this is the impact, and that is a solution that we can offer you. And make it look nice on a one-pager. Don't do it in 10 slides, do it on 1 page, and you talk to the customer and you show it, because that is making the intangible, which is your software or your service, it makes it tangible. And everybody wants to know what the use case means, because it's the use case that will go to the board to get approval.
Yeah. I've been jotting down a few points there. I think I understand what you mean, but you're saying about establishing the trust. You said about using images. Why should they use images? What's the importance of that? And what do you mean by use images?
So hang on. Images, I mean faces. People buy from people buy from people who believe. So if you use a face, then it's more trustworthy than a picture of a product.
Okay.
You see, if the face could actually even make a small statement, even if they're not your customers yet. Huh? It's not important that people always think I need to have this big name with a face. No, it could be just faces of people. If you look to, for instance, leadpages.net, who sell in essence a software where you can make landing pages, the whole landing page is littered with faces of people.
Actually, that's an interesting point, because I think there's a psychological aspect to that as well, is that I know even as newborn babies, when we're first born, we have this innateness that we look towards faces.
Yeah.
So you could be right. Yeah, I can understand that. And I think also, yes, as opposed to the sort of the Mr. Pittman of Bradford says, those sort of things that do look very phony. Actually, I have a funny story about that. I know many years ago, I knew somebody who was starting out as a professional photographer, and they created this website, and they had their references, and they'd put all this list of references, and everybody that knew this particular lady said, "You've just written those yourself, haven't you?" And she said, No, I haven't. And they said, "Yes, you have." No, I absolutely haven't. Well, how comes you've spelt the same word wrong in most of those references?
Oh, God.
And then she said, "Oh, I did actually. I did make those up." So I think it's got to be credible. It's got to be genuine. You can't just make this stuff up.
A small trick to be genuine, and it's a small, but it's a very important trick. I say to everybody, don't use stock pictures.
Oh,
make your own.
Yes.
Because it's funny how
I hate stock pictures. I hate them.
Yeah, that's why I go on your Flickr account, Mark, and I start stealing your pictures.
Yeah, that reminds me. Send invoice to Michael Humblet. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Just give me some discount, it's fine. So also what I mean with faces is take real faces, not these classic fake, I'm talking to a guy who was selling sales enablement software, and he had all these pictures of this, this BMW car sales guy on it. Said, don't do it. Those are not real salespeople. I mean, these need to see, right?
Have you seen the images that they take at these stock where you have an office and it's always a group of multicultural people all crowded round together with sort of their hands on each other's shoulders, smiling at a computer? Yeah, I detest that. Well, that's one of my first qualifications actually, is when I'm looking to see if I want to engage with a client, I have a look on their website. If they've got any of those images, I say, no, I just can't deal with these sort of people.
Exactly. Then the other thing is that if just continuing this thread of thought, so if you then say, okay, I need to put some social proof, but you don't have any customers yet or not enough, what you could do is say compatible with. That works really well. And you just put some big names there. That works. I've seen that several times. You could also say featured by, and then you put some magazines, for instance. Most of these startups have.
See. Yes, so where you've managed to get some PR magazines.
For
instance, where you've been featured.
It's all the same kind of concept. And then what else? I'm just thinking. And if you have to show brands and logos, be careful. Make them all white or make a uniform color, so you never have this endless debate of exact color is not matching to whatever brand criteria. Yes. So you do it that way. And then if you put, some of these startups get funded by a lot of companies, and then I say, don't say funded by or supported by, say trusted by.
Yes. I think I the way you were talking
all your
about
customers actually, which is 10 times stronger.
Where you were saying use case, I think for a software development company, which is who we're talking to here, they should have, even if it's not customers, they should have the beta sites, because in developing their product, they have to be really close to their customer. I would be a bit concerned if they were developing this in isolation without getting feedback from customers.
But Mark, you would be amazed, even larger companies that would buy from these companies or invest, they don't want their brand or logo on those websites. I've seen it so many times. And for me, it's really.
But surely that's the trade-off, isn't it? Because they're going to be developing something at minimal, or they're providing something at minimal cost.
Yeah.
And in exchange, you're going to be saying to these people, okay, well, we can do a deal here, but I need to be able to use you as a case study.
I understand, and you're right. The problem is sometimes you have to wait 6 months for that. So I'm all the stuff I'm saying is actually
Right.
ways to shortcut, ways to
Yes.
hack your leads, lead
Yes.
hacking or whatever you want to do is
Okay.
just move faster, and you need to move faster because anybody looking at the site, it needs to have this impact of social proof, and if it doesn't, you're done, you're dead.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's good, and I know that that's sort of a main philosophy of you is get it done, move quickly, move on,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think from a sales perspective that's good. Very action orientated.
Yeah.
You
Some
don't need to be frustrated.
one word of warning: there are some brands that you cannot mess with. For instance, don't ever put SAP on your website because they will hunt down whoever you are, wherever you are.
They will
Just
hunt you
just
down
telling
and kill you. Yes.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So there are some brands you just don't want to mess with, right? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So
What about just linking to that? What about once they've made those first few sales? What
Yeah.
about referrals? I mean, that's something that's been a sort of a mainstay in traditional sales for all industries. I don't
so
actually see it. My experience, and maybe I've missed something here. I find that there's a lot of people in the software industry that don't really leverage the opportunity for referrals.
I think they're afraid to ask,
Yes, yeah,
and I also think that a lot of the buyers are actually evil because I've seen it many times. They will say, yeah, if you want my referral, you first need to finish the project, or you first need to do this or that. So sometimes when a project takes six months, you're in trouble, right?
okay.
So you have to be careful with referrals. I also think that referrals is the ultimate. If other people talk about you, it's 10 times stronger. So everything I do, everything I teach is always saying you need to find a way to get other people talking about you. If this podcast, for instance, Mark, is being picked up by somebody and they post about it, it's going to be 10 times stronger than you and I post about it. It's the same concept. So you need to find ways. And actually, what I do is, in a lot of the marketing material and a lot of the material I'll start producing or helping them with, it's always about how do you get other people to take the next step? How can they take a picture of it? Can you remove all the friction of doing that? And then you're really winning, because that's exponential viral type of marketing. So referrals, yes, absolutely, but there will be some resistance in the beginning.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And just you mentioned about podcast, and since we're on a podcast, what are your thoughts about creating podcasts?
So there has been the last years, there has been a lot of noise around, let's say, social first. So people were posting pictures and jokes, and then now you had a lot of years about video first.
Yes.
And now you see a big change, especially in the US, and it's starting to come over here. It's audio first because of the rise of Amazon Echo, Google Home, all of these assistants at home.
Yes.
Voice is very natural. By the way, I have one of these Amazon things at home, and my kids really love this thing. They're native Dutch, Flemish actually, but they speak in English. Alexa, what's the weather? And it's ridiculous. And they tell jokes and stories, and I'm listening and I'm thinking, oh boy, if we do our podcast, we need to learn how to be on that device, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's going to be important for people to... And also when I do video, you always are aware of your own body. And I get very tired after a while. You don't see it in the video, but I really get tired after a while. I don't have that with podcast because it's a more natural flow of communication.
I think also it relates back to newsletters, because that's something that we started. I think we were doing electronic newsletters in the software industry back in 1999.
Yeah, and people would actually read it because email was the medium then. Everybody would read his emails. Now, how many emails do you get, Mark?
200 a day, 250 a day.
So,
I mean, a lot of that's filtered out now, fortunately.
Yeah. So, but for instance, that's why I believe in LinkedIn. I thought, how many emails do you get on LinkedIn a day?
6.
Voila. So you will read all. If there's something there, you're going to read it. So it's all about attention. That's what I said in the beginning. I said it's all about attention.
Yeah.
And And so I think there are not too many podcasts. I think there is still a lot of room, and I think we need to learn to master the skill so we can bring the newsletter in another type of form or whatever. But
Yes, yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
essential.
And
And
I think we've
yeah,
both started this with the attitude that we did a little bit of research, but we're not experts in the area of podcast. And I think we started the first one to say, let's try it. We did some research to find out that actually half an hour is about the right length. That's the most popular length for a podcast because it tends to be roughly the average person's commute. And also if they go to a gym and they put it down onto an iPod or some mobile device, they can listen to it while they're working out. And if, this podcast is aimed at senior executives, and senior executives are typically very, very busy. So it's a very time efficient way to be able to get through to them and get, and communicate. And I think also one of the things that we found with newsletters is it's quite time consuming to sit down and create a newsletter with enough meaningful and interesting content. That's
yeah.
lots and lots of work.
So something I learned, because I also do newsletters, and I think they are very valuable if you do it the right way. But I tend to write long ones with lots of things in there, and I realized that all the people, when they click, they always click on the first kind of link. So the first story, there is links documenting something, showing something. So I think my next newsletter is going to be something dramatically different. It's going to look like a normal email with a bit of text with just one link. And I think if you send those every 2 weeks instead of once a month, a big monolithical thing which nobody reads everything, which is a lot of work,
Yes.
I actually believe that approach might work. Smaller,
Yes.
one or two key things, and all the rest, you can't digest more. Why would you do more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's lots of different personality types, and I know that we've been doing the newsletter for years and years, and we meet people who they say to us, "Oh, we get your newsletter. I don't read it all the time, but every 2 or 3 months I'll dip into it." Other people say, "Oh, it's great because it's keeping me up to date on the industry news. I think it's the best in the industry." Others who say, "Oh yes, you're the guys who produce that newsletter. I don't really read it, but I'm aware that you produce it," that sort of thing. So it does vary, but I think the big benefit of podcast is that also we want people to get to know us. They want to get a feel for you as an individual and
Yeah,
also the
true,
company as well.
true,
And I
true.
think that there are lots of other things that they can pick up. They can read something that you've written, and they will get obviously a certain preconception about who you are, about the style and the tone and the vocabulary, and even how you construct your sentences.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same as to actually listening to somebody for half an hour.
I was yesterday there was a growth hacker that was speaking just before me. I
Yeah.
had to do some this week. I think I spoke to 600 people. I just had speaking slots one after the other, and this guy was talking about newsletters, and suddenly he said, there is a tool called lumen5.com, and what that thing does is you log in, you just give it the URL of your newsletter, or you copy paste it in there, and it makes a movie out of it completely automatically. So it picks pictures based on the words. And I was watching, and I tried it while he was talking, and I'm thinking, wow. So then you have both, right? You can have the little movie that you post, you have and because I like to digest movies, I don't like to read too much in a newsletter. I like books, but not in a digital format. And I'm thinking, good God. So Mark, we should try it.
What was
Lumen5.com.
Lumin5? Lumin?
What we'll do is we'll put it below the podcast so our
Okay.
listeners can actually have a try.
Yeah.
I'm not making any money on this. It's just something I found
No.
and thought this
No,
is good.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I could see how that works. I've seen with some YouTube videos where you've got an automated voice, where I think that they've just given the software some plain text,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
automated voice. I've listened to a few of those. That didn't really engage with me.
No, I should try this one.
It's like listening to a very inarticulate robot. It was a bit boring.
If you don't mind, I want to quickly come back to the referrals
Yes,
kind of thing.
go for it.
Because for me also, this all fits into one big bucket, which is how do you get to some of these customers? And I always have to think of this story. I met the CEO of a company called Sentience, and he told me, I was showing him cold emails and cold scripts and all that, and he looked at it and he says, Michael, none of this would work with me. And I said, but what would work with you? And he said, well, if somebody that I know would tell me, hey, you need to talk to these guys. And I said, okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So, but he's been selling to some very large companies. I can't mention them, but really really famous companies. And I said, okay, so how did you get to these guys? And he said, well, it's simple. I spent half an hour, he's the CEO, I spent half an hour every day trying to figure out on LinkedIn, who do I know that can get me to the CEO of, let's say, a Tesla, something like that.
Yes.
And then he spends his time writing them short messages. Hey, long time ago, could you introduce me? And he says, let's say I send 10 of these messages a day, at least one of them actually connects me. And he says that's his way of, and he actually gets through to all these big guys. So that's his way of doing it. And it's been stuck in my brain, like, if you really want to get to the exact game, next to having a good product, next to having a good story, that is actually the way to do it. Spend some time. So next to all the marketing stuff, but do spend, as a founder, as a CEO, as an exec, do spend some time a day trying to get to the really hard, difficult to reach people.
It's a sort of an internet networking, quite a focused approach.
It's the next version of a referral type of thing, because if a guy that I know tells, that's actually the referral. And I'm just thinking about, if somebody does it to me, I would actually either help them, that means I trust them, or if I get a referral, I will phone up and say, hey, interesting. By the way, Mark, how do you do your business? It's almost like that if you think about it.
I think at least, difficult to say over the years, I would say probably 50% is by recommendation that we get. And then there's also a certain percentage of people that they either are aware of us because we specialize within the software tech. So we send out the newsletter, we do videos and things, and they get aware of us over a period of time. And quite often we will bump into people, we will have meetings with them, and you establish a relationship. And it can be years later that somebody comes back to you. I mean, a case example came up today actually. Company contacted us, and we did business with them 14 years ago. In fact, we'd forgotten about it. It was only when we started to just do a search, we started to see email exchanges, and we realised they'd been a previous customer. It happens. I mean, fortunately, we do get some repeat business, even though you would think that wouldn't happen so much with an M&A company. But we have started to see that, because there are larger organisations that they may divest parts of their business many times. Obviously, companies making acquisitions, and sometimes what I like to see now actually is, I think, for the small and medium-sized software entrepreneurs, is where they are very, very skilled, lots of energy, enthusiasm, is they can take an idea and create something of value, build it to a certain size, and then look to pass it on to another organisation with much bigger resources and networks and so on, and then they go and do it again. I must admit, I like the idea of being able to work with some really good software entrepreneurs on a sort of more of a long-term basis. You get to know them, they get to know us the way we like to work, because we are different. So it's about trust and knowing people, isn't it? Again, which is where we started this, isn't it?
Referral is a way of getting trust, and then it's attention, and mixing both. It's the key. See, we complete the circle, Mark. We're doing well today.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a couple of things that I wanted to bring up from that came up this week for me. One of the things that I did earlier on this week was having a workshop with one of our newer clients, and it was actually the second in what we call our spoke sessions. So as you move around the wheel, it's just working with them, and it would convinced me the power of asking really good questions. Yeah, I remember hearing somewhere, and I think it might even been Tony Robbins. The power of an answer is asking in really good questions, spending
It,
time and thinking about the questions.
it's
And
yeah, absolutely, I agree. Question
and
is the yeah.
it stimulates your thinking, doesn't it? I was I took that one stage further and asking really big questions. You know, what
Like
would
what? Yeah,
what what we were talking about typical customer profiles. Who is your customer? Who is the target market you're aiming at? And what we were doing there is we were looking at their more profitable existing customers. And then I thought of asking it slightly different way, and we got a different answer, which was, what would your perfect customer be look like? Ignore who
yeah,
you've had in
the
the
dream
past.
customer. Yeah,
Yeah, but really
yeah,
perfect, ultimate. And actually, the answer that they came back with was really quite interesting, which was actually it wouldn't be the end user for us. It would be the SharePoint consultant because they have access to many, many customers. And I said, in order for you to be
yeah,
able to do
yeah.
that, what would you then do? And it started us off on a channel of thinking in actually putting something of value together. They obviously sell software, that's where the area we focus, but actually the thing of value that they can provide to those SharePoint consultants is a package that enables those consultants to make money by by creating referrals or selling their software. And that involves understanding the value that this software brings, but also understanding the best way to sell it.
Yeah.
And we started about thinking about putting a course together and giving certain people access to that course, all of those things. And it was just quite interesting how one question can just change the direction of your thinking. And hopefully, and I think it did, I think it brought some value.
Absolutely. How,
So,
what's the guy's called again that does this podcast with so many listeners?
Tim Ferriss?
Tim Ferriss. He's actually
Yes.
the guy with all the questions, and he they asked him a question at a certain stage, and he said, "I actually have a very boring day. I spend my whole day about just one thing. What is the one domino I need to push to make all the rest fall?" That's actually the you asked the right question for to get to the domino.
Yes, that's a good question to ask each other, isn't it? So
Yeah.
maybe you from a sales perspective and me from an M&A, and I don't know what the answer is yet.
No, me neither. I've been thinking about it ever since I've heard it. I thought, damn, that's a good one.
Okay, if you've got a sales force and they're experienced salespeople, you've got a new product for them to launch. What's the one domino that you would want to knock over?
The value prop. If you get the value prop really right, it pulls everything else.
How do you know when it's right?
You know, you know it when just the reaction of people. And it's not only the reaction that they like it. It's also that there is an action. You need the action. The action of buying or doing, getting. If they start pulling at you, then you're there. Most sales people get excited, but then it stops. See, and it's a
Yes.
mix of the value prop needs to be actionable, or the sales narrative needs to be actionable by them, not by you, but by them. So it needs to motivate them from within, and that's you've nailed it. But it's really tough to get there.
Yes, quite often. And again, just an hour ago, we were talking about that Mark Twain quote about, sorry for the length of this letter, but I didn't have time to write you a short letter. And
Yeah,
it's similar. It's similar. This is actually, the value proposition is going to be quite short, but it's going to take you probably quite a long time. And don't underestimate the amount of thinking that goes into that to create that in a very engaging and easily understood. Did you hear that? The software world, make it easily understood. I, I
so
think I think I'm going to have that tattooed on me somewhere actually, because so many companies I come across in the software industry, because they're engineers, they want to talk in acronyms and techie talk. It
true.
amazes me, and even the salespeople get pulled into it. But that's a
So
really
what?
good one.
So Mark, what would it be for you in an M&A context?
So for a company that's looking to sell,
Yeah,
I think that they need to educate themselves. I know by the questions that I'm often asked, and especially when we're in a competitive position where they're talking to, I've been in situations where they're talking to 10 or more different M&A companies, that the questions that they're asking me are the wrong questions, and they're going to end up probably with the wrong M&A company, and they don't know enough about the M&A process and the industry to be able to make a judgment. That you know, if I was advising, you know, if my brother had a software business but I wasn't in M&A anymore, that's what I'd say to him is educate yourself about what really goes on, because you would be amazed. And if you don't know enough about that industry, you won't be asking the right questions. And that happens more than you think. It really does. It's amazing.
It's an interesting one.
Do you know how long we've been talking? 30 minutes and 17 seconds.
Perfect. Really good. I actually, you can't imagine, but I'm sitting in this in the corner, and I have a queue of people waiting. So I'm thinking, okay, the brand, personal branding on the movies is kind of working, but so I need to get going, Mark. So it was a pleasure talking to you as always.
Yeah, no, that's great, and we'd like to thank all our listeners. Welcome any questions or comments you may have. This is the Boss It podcast, Unlocking the Software Industry, One Conversation at a Time, by Michael Humblet and Mark Edwards. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, comment and share. Thank you and goodbye. And thank you to Michael. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mark. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.